Hello and welcome to this panel discussion with the question, what's going on in the choral world? Welcome to everybody here in the hall and also to all the people watching us on their screens at home or somewhere else. I am Sonja Greiner. I was here at the very first competition 34 years ago as a student helper. I was then the manager of the International Chamber Choir Competition from 1992 until 1995. And I have recently been appointed to the committee of the International Chamber Choir Competition. And I am sitting here with a second head, which is that I am Secretary General of the European Choral Association. And together with the Choral Festival Network and the competition in Marktoberdorf, we discussed the fact that the world has changed. There have been a lot of changes in the world that also affect the choral world. They have changed the attitude of the choirs, they have changed what is going on in the choral events. And we are facing new challenges, and we have to find new solutions. So we are connecting this panel to the surveys which were developed in cooperation between our three organizations. We have a total of 90 minutes today, and you will meet some panelists, which I very shortly want to present to you, and I will tell you a bit more about them later. So you will hear from Kaie from Estonia, Burak Onur Erdem from Turkey, from Vanags from Latvia, from Jeffrey Allen Murdoch from USA, and from Jürgen Budday from Germany, whom you have seen a couple of times these last days on stage, and you have sung with him. But before we start, Ramona Wegenast, whom you have also met on stage before, and with whom I worked on the preparation of this panel and also on the surveys, will give you a short introduction into the first results of the surveys. And I would like to use this occasion to say the surveys are not closed. So if you have not had a chance to answer them, but after seeing the questions you are intrigued and you want to help us collect data for choirs or for events, please do feel free to still fill in the surveys. And with this, I pass the word to Ramona.
Yeah, thank you, Sonja. So what's going on in the choral world was, we developed two surveys, one for choirs and one for festivals or for concert makers. So, and these are the results of the surveys. In some slides I have made comparisons of the two surveys and compared the results of the choir survey and of those of the festival. So these were the participants and their choirs as well as the festivals that participated in the surveys. So we had 49 persons and 11 festivals. And most of the feedback came from Germany and from Norway. I don't know why. So, and here are some questions after the time of the pandemic. We can see that most of the choirs could rehearse continuously, even when it was only online. So, and the higher diagram shows that nearly 60% of the choirs had changes in their musical level. The diagram below shows the organizer's assessment. We can see that the choirs are much more critical in their assessment of whether they have lost musical level than the organizers. Yes, and 50% had problems to hold the singers. I think that is very interesting, but also 54% could recruit new singers. So, and this is a question related to the energy crisis. We can see that most of the choirs had no problems, only 25% had problems with less heating and so on. Yes, and these two diagrams show that half of all choirs had to struggle with less income because concerts were cancelled. However, when the concert could take place, the audience number were constant for more than the half. Yeah, and almost half of the concerts were cancelled because of financial reasons, only 33 because of musical reasons. Yeah, and this is a question about the behavior of singers. Even though only 25% of the choirs had problems with the behavior of the singers, it shows that this has meant serious problems for the choirs. They changed priorities. More family singers are less reliable and don't come to the performances with a few days' notice. I think this is a big problem. Here. And here we can see that more than 70% has already participated in international competitions, so that were the questions about the pandemic. And now the questions are for, yeah, if festival, for the competitions and festivals. So we see 70% has already participated in an international competition, and nearly 60% is currently interested in participating in a competition. So, yeah, and the question is, what kind of event do you prefer, and what competitions would interest you? Most of the conductors would like to prefer festivals and competition with further educations. So this is much more interesting for the people to have a festival or competition with an educational program. And this was a question to the festivals. As we can see, the wishes of the singers are taken into account here. And they are also the most festivals and competitions are with further education programs. Yeah, and the participants of competitions prefer competitions with several choir categories, and shorter the event, and the shorter the event, the better. The best period seems to be 3 days, so we see our competition or our festival is a little bit too long. Yes, and now, yeah, the best months to travel to events and the problematic months to travel to events. This statistic shows how difficult it is to find the best period for a festival. What is clear is that it should not take place in the winter months. And this is the reality. Most festivals take place in May and in July. So, yeah, a question about the costs. A very difficult issue is that of the participation fees, of course. I am not sure if the participants have read the question correctly, because I asked for the acceptable fee per participant per festival. And some said something about 1,000 euros, and I think this is quite a lot. In summary, about 100 to 200 euros per participant is okay. Yeah. And this was a question for festivals. Most festivals have participation fees. The amount of the participation fees varies greatly. Due to the different event, it is very difficult to make a comparison here. So, and this was the question, what represents the highest organizational effort? And the most difficult thing is obviously finding and financing the accommodation. This is the highest organizational effort for the choirs. And on the other hand, only 50% of the festival help to organize accommodation, and only 20% assist with funding. So, and this is a question about if the choirs are prepared to sing concerts for the organizing festivals, and these are good news for all organizers. The choirs are happy to sing concerts and prefer concerts together with other choirs. And the question about connecting tours. They are very welcome, even though we in Marktoberdorf have more and more problems finding choirs who are willing to travel on and give further concerts without a fee. Yeah, the question, how many months before an international festival or competition would you like to apply? Yeah, most of the choirs want to apply only 6 months before a festival starts. Yeah, you can imagine how difficult this is for an organizer. Yeah, and how many weeks or months before a festival do you need confirmation? And they would like to have the confirmation directly after their application. Yeah. So, and this was a question of what organizational help the choirs want from the festivals. And as we saw before, the choirs wish to have more organizational help to find an accommodation. This should be the most difficult thing. Yeah, by what means does the announcement of the competition festival reach you? The choirs receive information especially through social media and larger choir associations like Choral Festival Network, IFCM. And we come to an end. Yeah, what suggestions, ideas, wishes would you have for the festival or competition organizers? A lot of answers, like you can see. Make festivals where we can learn, so we have the point of the educational program. Awards, if possible, monetary, of course. What do we have? Participation fee per singer or an entry fee and not both. A high quality of audio-video recordings. Thank you, Moritz. We have it. And yeah, not to get more than 3 choirs from the same country. I think for us this was very interesting. Yeah, and what would your dream festival look like for you as a conductor or a choir? Here we can see that many festivals that are members of Choral Festival Network are seen as role models. This confirms our conviction that it is important to have guidelines for festivals that act really fairly towards the choirs. So we have Marktoberdorf for 3 times, I think, but also Cork, Basel, Interkultur. So, and this is the next page, just to see Bilbao is one of the dream festivals, and Tallinn and Europa Cantat. So, and these are the encouragements to the organizers. Go on, we will survive the bad times. Keep on, and of course we will keep on. I can say thank you to everyone who took part in the survey, and it is still open, so you can still participate in our survey. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ramona. Yes, I think she deserves an applause for doing this evaluation while preparing an international chamber choir competition, which had a very short time for preparation this year. So we now have about an hour to listen to our panelists. And at the end, we will also give you in the hall the possibility to ask questions or make comments, because I know that many of you also represent either a festival or a choir, and you will have an opinion maybe on some things you will hear. Just to summarize before I start asking the question, 2 years ago, we thought that the one and only crisis we were facing was the pandemic, and that once the pandemic would be over, the crisis would be over. And then suddenly, when the pandemic was not really over yet, we had a war in Europe that, at least on some of our countries, had a huge impact on the energy in our countries, and there were so-called energy crises. And if the prices for petrol rise, the prices for everything you have to buy and that has to be transported rise, so we suddenly had an economic or financial crisis that we were not anticipating. And on top of that, we have had for a long time, and we sometimes forget that, a climate crisis. And the climate crisis has an impact also, at least in some countries, on what choirs want to do and can do, or what organizers want to do and can do. And I will just give one example. There's a festival in Germany where actually people from the host town protested against the international festival because the CO2 level of the festival was too high because choirs were traveling from far away. This is a completely new argument we are suddenly also faced with. And I'm not saying that they are right, but I'm saying that we have to face all those arguments, all those crises, and mentally prepare on what to do, what to say, and how to find solutions, because we don't only want to complain today. So I will also ask the panelists to say something about how they envision the solutions to some of the issues that we are facing. I will start with my neighbor. Kaie is the president of the Choral Festival Network, and there are actually several members of the Choral Festival Network in the audience as well. But she's also the Secretary General of the Estonian Choral Association, so she's also wearing several hats here. Kaie, what are you hearing, or have you heard, because you just had a General Assembly, from the other members of the Choral Festival Network? Which challenges are they currently facing? We heard, for example, that one competition that has been existing for over 50 years had to close down due to lack of financial support. Have you heard about similar challenges from other festivals and competitions? Have you heard if the events are attracting less or more people than before the pandemic, and if the habits of the people have changed? So that's for the Choral Festival Network. And since you are from Estonia, maybe also how is the situation in Estonia, especially concerning international events? And you have maximum 10 minutes to answer all of that, which is a bit of a challenge, but let's try.
Yes, just as Sonja said, I am talking mainly about complaints, because I have talked really to many international festival organizers, and people are talking about what they are concerning about. I must say that many festivals have less applications and learn less participants. Of course, it doesn't go for every festival. Some festivals have also experienced much higher the number of applications, but mainly it has decreased. And many festivals are struggling with lack of finances, because several sponsors, municipalities, also state organizations are not so eager to support crowded choral festivals which bring many people together, but it's also part of economic crisis, of course. Higher travel prices and higher accommodation prices affect many festival organizers, because everything you make is now much more expensive. Also, there are talks about possible tax rises in several countries, which also affect choral festivals. And which is interesting that many choirs also don't apply for the festival because they feel that the level of the choir is lower than before COVID. They haven't had enough rehearsal time, or rehearsals may be stopped even. And as they feel that the level is not high enough, they just are not applying for the high-level festivals. So it's mainly the challenges which festival organizers experience. I am very happy that many of them have found solutions and decided that even if the festival is smaller than it was before the COVID, they still organize the festivals. I can say the same about Estonia. Also, our national festivals experienced the decrease of number of participants. And also decrease the number of singers in choirs generally, which mainly conductors say is that older singers have left the choirs and they didn't come back after the COVID. And we have, at least in Estonia, many mental health problems because of the ban of public caterings and ban of social communication. I can say personally that I have been conductor for 25 years, and I have never seen children from 12 to 19 having stress, anxiety, and also diagnosed depression. In such age, it was really first time when I see that, and it was really caused by COVID. And I also have seen that the news in media that going out is dangerous because you get infected, or traveling is dangerous because you bring infection to your country, or getting together is dangerous, and so on. It has caused much anxiety. We have one singer who got agoraphobia and really didn't dare to go out after the COVID because of the news which said that going out is dangerous. And we also have several singers with traveling anxiety. They just can't physically travel because of the news that traveling is dangerous. So I think that the communication in media has been really giving very strong messages. And also I got a message, a phone call, some parents that they would like their children to have safer hobby than choral singing, which is a little bit frightening. But I think that it's very important for us to give positive messages. And we already see that singers are coming back to the choirs also in Estonia. As I said, older singers, many older singers won't come back to the choirs, but with adults, children and youth, it is possible, and we already see that they come back, but it is really very important that we all give positive messages. Also about traveling, gathering, visiting festivals, because we can't stop communicating each other. Of course, there must be balance between crazy traveling and just visiting international festival, which is maybe even not far from your home. So we see also from the Europa Canta Junior Festival this summer that the places were filled in 2 weeks, and we really see that children and young people have need, and they feel need to come together. And I am very happy that many festivals are very popular. I'm sure it is coming back for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaie. I would like to pick out one thing. As European Choral Association during the pandemic, actually before the pandemic, we had planned to do a campaign on the benefits of singing. And then when the pandemic came, my first reaction was, oh my God, can we still do that? Since it seems that singing has become the most dangerous free time activity in the world. We had a German choir who did a fantastic song about singing being more dangerous than bungee jumping and everything else. And then we decided to do some advocacy work and say, actually, we should communicate it's not singing that is dangerous, it's the virus that is dangerous. And any activity where you cram 80 people into one room without air coming in is dangerous, only that the press, for some reason, the media, and the choirs were partly responsible for that themselves, talked more about singing than about weddings where the virus spread, or 80th birthdays where the virus spread, sports events, etc. So we tried to do a lot of communication about saying singing is actually good for you and it's the virus that is dangerous. And I think the other element that is very important is the mental health issue. I was invited to join a brainstorming meeting of the European Union about youth, culture and mental health. And I think this in a way can also be seen as an advantage for us now that, yes, in many European countries where young people couldn't go to school, couldn't see friends, it's frightening how many really young people are suffering from depression and anxieties, etc. I have several examples actually in my personal surroundings among friends. On the other hand, more and more countries and institutions are recognizing that collective singing is one of the activities that can help people with beginning mental health problems or can help prevent mental health problems. And this is something we should use as a strength. We should talk about both the physical and the mental effects of singing together with others. We're using singing as a therapy for long COVID patients, so we should talk about that as well. Singing is good for you, and singing helps your lung, helps you breathing. And singing is good for your mental health. So I think that's very important as well. Burak. Burak Onur Erdem is from Turkey. He has lived in Germany for a while, studied in Austria, so he's an international person. He's the vice president of the International Federation for Choral Music, IFCM, and also artistic vice president of the European Choral Association. And he has recently organized the IFCM World Symposium on Choral Music in Istanbul. Burak, what is your experience concerning the interest of conductors around the world to sign up for an event like the World Symposium? Which were the main challenges you had to face when you were preparing and organizing the event? And how is IFCM planning to learn from this experience for possible future events? So that's for the IFCM side, your IFCM hat, and for your hat of the European Choral Association. It seems that there will be no Europa Cantat Festival in 2024 for the first time in the history of the association. What is the reason and what are the conclusions at the European Choral Association for the future? What about other major events of the association? A lot of questions as well.
Thank you, Sonja. These two hats should come together now, because that's the only way I can answer this in 8 minutes plus 2 that you can give. Well, I think starting with the IFCM side, the World Symposium on Choral Music in Istanbul, maybe you heard about it, or maybe you were there. Yes, I know many of you were there, has proven us happily wrong that there is less interest in the world. Actually, there is a lot of interest, and we need to come together. We like internet, but it doesn't happen online. We just need to meet and sing together. We had a lot of applications to, first of all, to be an invited choir and to be a presenter. I can tell you numbers: 114 presenter applications, 72 choir applications, of which we have selected 11. And in total, with the extended program, we had 55 choirs, 36 coming from Turkey. And we had, including the singers, the participants and the speakers, we had 2,500 people in Istanbul running around in the street, Istiklal Street, and talking about choral music and going to concerts and sessions. So that proves, I think, we have a lot of interest. And, well, but that comes with a lot of challenges too. One of our challenges was that we had to organize it in a very short time, like 9 months. I heard from one of my colleagues that 9 months is enough for actually many things in human life. So we, I think, made it possible in 9 months. But also another challenge that my country has faced is the earthquake that happened 2 months before in the southeastern part of Turkey, which was terrible. And I can tell you a number: 100,000 children are now studying in a different city because they have no home. And hopefully they will go back in this year. It's been rebuilt in a safe way, but of course it is very hard for a country to host a big choral event where there is a lot of emergency happening. And I think that also proves us something else, that choral music is a human need. Because I've been very happy to see that, this symposium was supported by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism in Turkey, and especially by the Turkish Tourism Agency. And I think it was really good to see that it proved that singing together is a basic need. It's really the only thing that can bring, well, it's a cliche, but it's the right cliche, the only thing that can bring cultures, nations, religions together in an instant. And that happened in Istanbul, with choirs from all over the world, coming also from Lebanon, but from Canada, from Taiwan, from Africa, so many, many different cultures. And that is actually the case with every festival that we are supporting. And well, I'm happy that for example, also the earthquake showed us ways of dealing with trauma, because we, as a team, had to come together at one moment and say, what do we do now? And this has been converted into a project where we have supported 200 music teachers from the earthquake region to come and join the World Symposium, and to give them a special program that we called Solidarity Program, for them to give them tools to use in their schools with their displaced children. And you know, so this is what, this earthquake challenge gave us the basic question of why we are doing it. And I think there have been many great answers. So going back to my other hat, the European Choral Association has, the Europa Cantat Festival, its flagship event, has been held for a very, very long time. And then we see another challenge. We could not find a host city that would be ready to organize such a festival in 2024. And that says a lot, I think, also about how we should approach, maybe find new ways of telling the funders, the policymakers, and the cities and about choral music. Maybe we should find new ways of discovering win-win situations, like in Istanbul, that we had, because it was a totally win-win situation for the country, for the choral world, for the tourism, and this still is valid, but maybe we need more connectors, more ambassadors in that sense. And of course, the European Choral Association will support a lot of events, and next year we will have, under the label of ECA, many festivals, many smaller scale festivals throughout Europe for singers and for choirs to attend. This is a basic need. But it also gives us a chance to take this 1 year for a strategical thinking of our future events 2025 onwards. What does the world need? What do the people want? And this is, I think, important sometimes really to go back one step and think about why we are doing it. So I think at the end, what I would say is it is very important that we keep doing it, we keep physical events, because pandemic has taught us a lot of good and bad things, but maybe the most important that we need each other in the same room. And I think this festival in Marktoberdorf proves it. So that would be what I would say, Sonja.
Thank you very much, Burak. I think this is very important. In the pandemic, we had to use digital tools. We had to meet online. And there's a lot of things you can do online. I think today we have people sitting at their screens, watching us and watching a panel like this and asking a question in the chat. That's something that can work well, and you can be more inclusive when you do that. But the danger of this is that people have also become more comfortable, they are more afraid of traveling, and they think, I don't need to travel, I can get everything at home. And we are getting this question very often, will you stream everything? We got it before the symposium. I got it before our membership weekends, our general assemblies. Do we really have to travel to another city in Europe? Can't we just attend online? And sometimes we have to decide to not do it. And I once heard the sentence to say, not every event has to be hybrid. You can be hybrid as an organization and say we offer online events when they make sense, but sometimes we offer live events that we don't open to hybrid participation. It is also possible to sing online together with digital tools, and I've done it myself. However, singing has something to do with human beings, with a person breathing next to you, and with talking in the break after the rehearsal. And that kind of gets lost when you do online rehearsals and online singing. And also in meetings, there are things you don't discuss when you're online, you know, to prepare a difficult situation. So we have to learn what is the best tool for everything. And I think the last thing I would like to pick out is the reason why you had very short preparation time was different from some other things. But if you look at what the choir said when they want to apply, And they say we want to apply 6 months before, and then we want to know the next day if we have been accepted, which logically is not possible because we have a committee that has to listen to maybe 100 applications and make a choice. And then we as organizers, if we only know 5 months before the event who is coming and how many choirs are coming, this is hell for the team. And we have to find a balance between that as well. The choirs have to learn on the conductors that if they all want to apply last minute, the organizers don't know how to prepare an event for how many people. And that is going to be a big challenge in the coming years as well, I think. Now let's go to Vanags from Latvia. He's a member of the jury of the International Chamber Choir Competition, as you've been told about 4 times in the last 2 days. So, though he was once maybe forgotten, but then mentioned afterwards. And Romans, you conduct several choirs in Latvia. And do you see any change in what the choirs want and can do internationally over the last years? Also, has the financial crisis impacted the possibility of your choirs to travel and attend competitions and festivals abroad? And how is that in comparison to the interest in national events that you also have in Latvia happening? And finally, you've probably also been on juries of other international competitions lately. Have you seen any changes happening in these competitions compared to competitions 4 or 5 years ago?
Thank you, Sonja, for questions. Unfortunately, I am not very fluently speaking English, but I believe you can understand something what I'm talking about. Yes, I came from a country who is really singing country, like also in Estonia and Lithuania, and the period, pandemic period was very, very disturbing all the choral movements in Latvia because we start preparing the big song celebration for children choirs, and then we have to postpone it, and afterwards we have to at least some events cancel, and then we do virtual song celebration for 12,000 singers, you know. Okay, I can explain in details what it happened, but this was really big challenge for us to keep this tradition because, you know, our singing tradition are 150 years old, and this song celebration brings together 40,000 people for one event during 1 week. And if you will come to my country this year, when we will celebrate this 150 years anniversary for this celebration, it will be big concerts, many concerts, dance concerts, brass orchestra concerts, and including all the kinds of choirs, female, male, and mixed choirs. And unfortunately, you cannot be taking part in this because the tickets were sold out in 1 hour. Approximately 100,000 tickets was sold for this event. This is just some overview about how big interest in Latvia are from the people and for the audience to be in team for this big song celebration events. And of course, after pandemic, we was very worrying how it will be because the choirs was singing, like you tell, and watching screens and singing some rehearsals. In my feeling, it's not very smart idea to do such a rehearsals. This is just to keep some connection with the singers, with the conductors, and make maybe some conversation, but not really make a music. Therefore, we was afraid. But when the pandemic goes almost in the end, then we can start rehearsed last year in the May, and now we are in the process to do the 2 concerts for choral singing, including 50 songs. It means all the Latvian singers will sing, approximately 18,000 singers will sing this program in 2 concerts. Each concert will be 2.5 hours. And it means this helps very much for our singers to be more motivated to come together and celebrate this tradition. Of course, it's not in every country. It's not possible to move the people, came back to the choir and start to do something. Regarding the international events, of course, this time we are not very able to go somewhere there for no Latvian choirs in this competition. But I'm so happy to be here, represent my country also, and watch. This is so nice that you invite this Ukraine choir, because the crisis, pandemic was a crisis. Now we are in tragical situation. This is not a crisis. This is really very, very tragical for every one of us. And therefore, every bright moment for those people who live in Ukraine is very important. Thank you. And the next about the national events. Of course, we have these national events every year. We verify the choirs. It should be like a national competition every year for the choirs. And this year, of course, is very special because we award the best choir in Latvia. And maybe you heard about this Latvian choir quality. They are going around the competitions and sometimes becomes winners of many competitions. And it is a moment when all the internationally awarding choirs come together for one competition. It's really great competition in Latvia, and it will be done also this summer. Comparing my feeling about international events now and years before, it's not easy to compare because activity, I feel it's not enough, and also the quality, as you told, it's not the same what we prefer before pandemic, but believe me, it takes time. And the choirs and conductors need the goals, and we can bring them the goals to go to good competitions, to good festivals, organize symposiums. This is our job, our duties to do this, and I believe we can manage this in the next future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I must say I've been to all 3 Baltic states, and sometimes I wish that all the countries in the world had the relationship to choral music that they have in these countries. It starts with the fact that I don't think I have ever met a person in any of those 3 countries that has not sung in a choir, at least during their school time, which also means that if you speak to politicians, you don't have to explain what choral music is. In Germany, I have to sometimes spell the word choir and explain what a choir is, because not everybody knows what choral music is, and it can be frightening to have this experience. And it also translates, I must say, in financial support from the state for those big national events that are getting strong financial support, but also for people to travel.
I can add a little bit the things what we have already, and of course this is very, very big privilege. For example, this song celebration this year, I can tell the numbers. The budget is 19 million euros. We built, during pandemic, we built a new open-air stage, and the cost for this stage was 100 million euros. We are not a rich country, but I am so glad that the country politicals understand what means singing for our country. Thank you.
And it's about pride. Yes, you can give an applause, I think, to this. And it's not that Latvia is a country that is richer than Germany. It's that they have decided to spend this money on singing. And I also say when you go to Tallinn, I think it's one of the very few cities in the world when you open a normal tourist brochure on the city, there are 2 pages about choral music in the brochure, because the singing revolution has had a very big importance in these countries. And they support Estonian conductors to travel. And I think what is very important, what you said also, is the word motivation. So we have to find motivation, we have to find goals. And I think translating this into competitions and festivals in the last years, it was important to tell the choirs, even if you feel you don't have the quality that you had before the pandemic, which is something Kaie also said, do go anyway. I mean, we had to do a festival in Ljubljana in 2021. The choirs were allowed to start rehearsing, I think, about 4 weeks before the festival started. They were totally panicky. They didn't want to have any streaming of concerts because they said we didn't have time to rehearse. And we said, it doesn't matter. It will be the first live concerts. People will hear. Do what you can. And I think that's very important that we give this message as well. I will pass the word now first to Jeffrey Allen Murdoch, who is here with the ACDA Exchange Program, is Associate Professor of Music at the University of Arkansas, and also President of the Southwestern Division of ACDA, the American Choral Directors Association, and member of the Executive Board of ACDA. And we are very happy to have you here. because we have stayed mostly in Europe until now, and we are an international organization, so let's cross the Atlantic. Do you see any changes in the attitudes of choirs attending choral events in the US or North America? Are there more financial challenges than in the past? And which type of events do the choirs prefer to travel to? Do they prefer competitions? Do they prefer festivals, conferences, etc.? I assume, since you're on the executive board of ACDA, that you were also at the ACDA conference this year. I was not able to attend this time. But was the attendance at the conference the same as before the pandemic, or did you see any differences? And did you see differences in the quality of the choirs that attended? And finally, what do you feel are the major challenges for choirs and choral events in your country at the moment? A lot of questions as well for 10 minutes.
That is a lot of questions, and I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm going to try to stay within my 10 minutes. I will start by saying that American choral music is not a monolith, and so it's important for me to note that I do not speak for all American choral directors because it exists in such different ways in different parts of the country. My colleagues are here, and I'm sure that they would all attest to very different experiences where they live, and so I'll share some of my experiences, and I've actually spoken to them too, and we'll share a little bit of some of their experiences as well. But I will say that there has been an increase in participation. Obviously, because of COVID, there were lots of things that happened. We learned how to teach by Zoom, and we learned how to do socially distanced choral ensembles, and we learned how to do, as we call in America, dog and pony shows to make sure that we kept our students interested in the choral musical art. And I will say, though, that there's been an increase of participation since COVID, because during COVID, we realized what we lost. We realized that the sense of community that we were able to have in choral music, the ability to come together and create something beautiful, the ability to be able to change people's hearts and lives through music, we weren't able to do that for 2.5 years. And so now that those bans have been lifted and we can travel again and we can come together again, it's the participation. People have been going out and doing the things that they've been wanting to and dying to do for the last 2.5 years. And so now we've noticed an uptick in those things. There's a huge resurgence in travel, both domestic and international. Again, we've been relegated to singing in rooms with no audiences and singing to cameras. And so the opportunity to be able to travel and to share this choral art with the world is not lost on us, but I think that we appreciate it in different ways now. Shared experiences is very important to this travel and to this bringing. We don't travel just to travel. I think before there was a novelty and there was an excitement in going to another country or going to another choral festival just to show what we can do. But now it's more about the collaboration. It's more about shared experiences. It's more about not taking music for granted. It's more about the process and not the product. And so I think that as we travel more and do more of those things, I think that we're starting to pay more attention to that which is important. You asked what events our choirs prefer to travel to, and I think it goes back to what I just mentioned. Again, it's one thing to be able to just sing and to impress audiences, but it's another thing to be able to collaborate with and to get into the communities and to be able to have those shared experiences. For example, a couple of my colleagues mentioned that when they tour, being able to have cultural exchanges with the ensembles with whom they work is very important. Being able to sing concerts, being able to collaborate, share music, being able to share food. I just took my ensemble from the University of Arkansas to Italy for 2 weeks, and one of the most memorable experiences for my students was being able to, not just singing in beautiful churches, which was awesome, not just being able to sing music of Gabriele in the church where Gabriele wrote. That's important too. But what was most important was being able to collaborate with a choir in Genova and then to be able to leave and talk about our shared choral experiences and then be able to leave and go have an Italian potluck at someone's house after that. Those experiences are what make travel so important and what reminds us of why we do what it is that we do. Yes, there are more financial challenges than there have been in the past. Unfortunately, unlike some of my colleagues here, we don't have the state or the government to fund choral music in the way that it is done here. I wish I had 90 million euros to build. Thank you so much. We take credit card. Yes, thank you. I wish we had that, but most of our finances come from private donors, from patrons who love choral music and who have been passionate about it. Maybe they've done it themselves at some point, and so most of our funding comes from those scenarios. Others of us have administrations. For example, my administration is very adamant that the ensemble, actually one of the ensembles that I conduct, the one that just toured, is predominantly African American, predominantly Black, and so there is a need for that ensemble to represent the university in meaningful ways, and so we have an administration that financially supports that. But it costs a lot of money for us to travel. To come to a festival like this, it would probably cost an American student about $4,000 to do this and to be here for this amount of time. And so it's no small feat. And some of us are fortunate to be able to have people in our corners, in our circles, that are willing to make those financial contributions for us. But others of us teach students that don't have those means. They come from socioeconomic statuses where they can't afford that kind of a trip. And so finances are difficult, and with inflation and with the financial crisis and with all the things that are going on in the world, it becomes more and more difficult. Major challenges facing choirs and choral music in the United States. Again, one challenge was bouncing back from the pandemic. I think that we learned how to do a lot of stuff, and we learned how to wear a bunch of hats, and we learned how to become all things to all people, more than just choir directors, right? We became counselors, we became financial advisors, we became additional parents to students, and all of these things. And so being able to bounce, but we became technology gurus, right? Being able to create virtual choirs and all of those things. And so I think one of the challenges post-pandemic has been rising to the standard that we had pre-pandemic, right? And so being able to, our teachers have had to, in 2 years, teach students that they would have, to make up for 3 years of lack of teaching, lack of consistent choral music education every day. And so to be able to have the standard that we are hearing on the stage in this conference is just really phenomenal, and it's a testament to the work that our conductors and educators are putting in. I see Sonja giving me the eye, and so I'm going to be done in just a second. I will also say the second thing for us in America has been becoming more inclusive in the music and our music offerings and what we offer at our conferences. In 2000, about 2 months after the pandemic, George Floyd was killed by the police in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And because we were at home, and because we had to be still, because we were socially distanced and isolated and all of those things, the world, the United States, yes, but also the world had to pay attention to things that were happening. And it was George Floyd's death that really became the catalyst for diversity, equity, access, and inclusion in the United States. You know that in the United States, we are not fortunate enough to have 1,000-year-old cathedrals and thousands of years of music history to draw from. Our country is just under 250 years old, and so our American culture, when it comes to choral music, is largely filtered through the lens of Western European music culture. And so those things that are indigenous to the United States, for example, the Native American music, African American spirituals, which are obviously a hybrid of and a result of the African diaspora, all of these things were done by oral tradition. And so even when we try to preserve that music, it's done through the lens of Western choral music. And so ACDA in the United States has done yeoman's work in terms of working through the process to make sure that every voice, that every culture, that every kind of music, especially those that are unique and indigenous to the United States are available and are worthy of practice, worthy of study, and to ensure that people who are performing those musics have the tools necessary to perform them in a meaningful way. For example, the same way if I'm going to perform Mozart Requiem, I need to study the performance practice. I need to determine how I'm going to pitch the orchestra. Am I going to use period instruments or not? Am I going to use Germanic language, Germanic Latin versus traditional Latin, right? All of these things, when you're studying spirituals, are important. When studying contemporary a cappella, it's important. When studying all of these genres that have been passed down by oral tradition, doing that research is really important. And ACDA is dedicated to doing that work. And so I'm really excited about the direction that ACDA is headed, the American Choral Directors Association. I will tell you that choral music is alive and well in the United States, and we're looking forward to all of the amazing things that are coming from the future. Our conference was down. This year, we were 85% at our national conference of what our typical conferences were, but even though the numbers were down, and that's myriad reasons, not just because people don't want to come to conferences, because people are dying to come back together and to sing again. But even though the numbers were down, the experience was absolutely amazing, and so we're continuing to reap the benefits of this resurgence and this new invigoration of choral music in the United States.
Thank you very much. I think one of the challenges of choral events, sometimes when I'm trying to convince people they should come to our festival or they should go to a competition, is that when you have never been there, you don't know what it means to experience it. And somehow you have to have been there once to know what you experience and to know that you don't want to miss it. And that's one of our challenges on how do we convince people who have never been there that they should try out this experience. Because that's, I think, what we felt also in Istanbul. The people who are there are thrilled, but we wonder why the people who are not there didn't come and how can we make them come. And I think that's a general challenge we have. Also, I think one very important thing you said was the wish for cooperation and shared experiences. And I think in the results that Ramona shared, we saw that the choirs, that's for me an interesting thing that is maybe also a change. They don't want concerts alone. They want share concerts, they want to meet other choirs, they want the cultural exchange. And it also means that some of our festivals or competitions may have to rethink their model and also to make sure that the choirs can actually listen to each other, because I've also been to festivals where, yes, there are two choirs in a concert, but they have to wait outside when the other choir is singing, and then it's actually very difficult to have a proper exchange with each other. But also that common meals and things like that are important, and you may have heard Jürgen saying a few times that one of the really important things that is happening here after the competition, especially from tonight when the choirs will be free of the competition part, is what is happening in the foyer or used to happen in the tent. That means the human encounters, the spontaneous singing together, and the Europa Cantat Festival that I've been working for so many years was created in exactly this spirit, the idea to put people together for 10 days, to sing together, not only for each other, but with each other, and to share accommodation, meals, free time, play football in the break, and sit at the table and say, how do you celebrate Christmas in your country? Or what do you have for breakfast in your country? And all these interesting questions that mean that there is a real cultural exchange. So before I come to our last panelist, I would like to remind the people at home especially that you can now start writing your questions in the chat, because Ramona here will bring the questions to the panel. So make sure that you make use of your time. And then we will also ask the people who are here in the hall if they would like to ask a question or add some comments. But before we do that, let's come to the hosts of this discussion, the International Chamber Choir Competition, and Jürgen Budday, whom you have seen on stage, is the artistic director of this competition. Jürgen, as director, you and other members of the committee of the competition reviewed applications last autumn or at the end of the year. Did you see a difference in the number and quality of the applications compared to the years before the pandemic? And has the attitude of the choirs changed? So, for example, have they applied later? Are more choirs asking for financial support to be able to come? And where else is the Marktoberdorf competition feeling the changes? Kaie mentioned rising costs. Has that been a problem here? Is the reliability of choirs a problem? They are supposed to stay here from Friday till Tuesday. Do they all do that or not? And how do you think the organization can address those challenges in future? Again, many questions for 10 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for these questions. As you know, the International Chamber Choir Competition takes place now, and we had already 3 days with competition. And we have a very special profile, I think. For us, it's very important to get the top choirs, international top choirs from all over the world. But that's not all. It's very important for us to have communication, to have exchange, what Sonja already said. That's for us also very important. But to give you some numbers about the development in the last years. Normally, we invite 12 to 15 choirs in our competition. That means we have to have a good number of applications to get this quality. Normally, before COVID, we had applications about 40 choirs, 40 high-level choirs. Before 2022, also the last competition last year, we got only 10 applications. For this year, we got 20 applications. So you can see COVID influenced a lot of our competition, and if you want to have a certain level, and so it may happen, you can invite less choirs, or you have to say quantity determines quality. If we have not a lot of good applications, we cannot offer a good quality. The attitude of the choirs has changed enormously. That means application deadline, we had to extend this application deadline last year. 1 day before the end of the application, we had one choir. And in the last day, then came about 10 more choirs in the very last moment. So we extended our deadline and got 5 more choirs, but with the result that another choir retired because of his annual planning. And that means the time is very, very short and compressed for the decisions of the choirs and for our decisions to plan such an event. As I said, the profile of Marktoberdorf means getting choirs from all over the world. In the meantime, it is extremely hard for the choirs to pay traveling, and in our case, only by help from the Goethe Institute, it was possible to facilitate the trip for some choirs. We got a certain amount from the Goethe Institute, and we could share this amount and distribute for some choirs coming from far away. Otherwise, we could not have had maybe the Philippine choirs or the Mexican choirs. It would have been impossible. On the other hand, we noticed that the interest in competitions by European choirs has been decreasing this year, while non-European choirs are more stable in applying. In this year, we had only from Europe, choirs from Eastern Europe, no choir from Middle Europe besides Germany, or Southern Europe, Western Europe. Only from Eastern Europe and Finland we got applications. The choirs are waiting for their application until the last moment. And some have difficulties also to pay the application fee. Later application means shorter time of preparation for the festival and thus more stress for the management. But the claim remains the same or is increasing. That means we get a lot of questions and asking, can you do this and can you help this? And the claim is really the same as before COVID. But we have less money. Of course, we have to find against rising costs, as I said. We offer our choirs meals, lodging, and transport to the concerts. This is a great challenge by constant grants. But on the other side, we are happy to receive still grants so that we can continue and we don't have to finish our festival, as it was mentioned at the beginning, with tour and so this problem we don't have. Normally we can't complain about lacking reliability of the choirs, but we realize that the part of the choirs can't stay or won't stay until the end of the festival because of exams or private matters. It's more and more difficult to hold the choirs here in Marktoberdorf over the whole time of the festival. But first of all, we want to keep up our profile, and we will address it clearly to all choirs. I mean, the different festivals and competitions should not be interchangeable, and every competition should have its profile. My experience is that competitions are helpful in raising the level of choirs and the choir music itself. I could watch these facts over more than 20 years in the German choir competition, in which I had the presidency. Choirs get better by competitions, and therefore competitions are necessary and indispensable. That's why I'm optimistic in the future of our festivals and competitions. And here in Marktoberdorf, I think we have no alternative. Either we get our choirs from over the world, or we lose our profile. And therefore we are fighting to keep up this profile and this event and this wonderful competition over Whitsuntide.
Thank you very much, Jürgen. I think you said some very important things, and we recognized some things that were mentioned before. Just to say, I think this question of the profile, or in marketing you would say the unique selling point, is very important for every event. And every competition and every festival has a unique selling point. And it's maybe more important than ever to show this and explain this. I think the other point that is important, we saw in the survey before, that choir said our ideal length of stay is 3 days. Now it may depend. If you're traveling from United States to Germany, you probably don't want to travel to Germany only for 3 days. So the problem is usually more for choirs that are coming from nearby, that are coming by bus or by car. And actually I attended a competition last year where the winning choir was not there for the final concert. They decided to leave before. And I think this is happening more and more as well. So they sign a paper in advance where they promise they will stay until the final concert where the winners are presented. But then either the whole choir or a part of the choir decide to go home maybe because they can't take so many holidays, it has become more challenging for them to stay. And to combine those two things also of the international choirs, who probably would say 3 days, well, it's not enough. And also, if we want to fulfill all the wishes they have, and they say we want to have concerts, we want to meet each other, we don't want to do only a competition, which is one of the unique selling points of Marktoberdorf for me, is that it's a competition and a festival in one. And after the competition, you have 2 days of festival, sorry. That was the timer. It becomes very difficult to squeeze all that into 3 days. And then we also saw in the survey, there's some choirs say, but we don't want to have a concert on the day of our competition. This is an impossible wish for Marktoberdorf, because then we couldn't do all the concerts we're doing. So we see we're being a bit, pulled in all directions, and we have to try to find our place in all this. What I like is that I hear optimism as well. We have to find ways to adapt, and we can adapt. We make our festival a bit smaller. We maybe have to sometimes make compromises. And I think that's very important. And maybe we have to find new ways, as Burak also said. Maybe we have to find new answers, new events for the future. We have 15 minutes. Some people are already sneaking out of the room because they want to go to a concert tonight, so we can also finish a bit earlier. But I want to give the audience, both at home and here, the possibility to add comments or ask questions. Do we have a microphone down there? Yes. So there's a microphone in the room if you have a question. Who would like to make a comment, tell something from your own experience, or ask a question to one of the panelists? Then please feel free to show up. No. Any questions from the chat? Also not. Then before, maybe people really want to leave early, but before closing, I will ask the panelists, did you have any questions to each other after what you heard? Would you like to ask a question or add a comment? Not officially. So, that's a very good point. So maybe we don't want to make all the comments on stage and in front of a camera that is streaming us into the whole world. So I would say we will take this as a sign that some people want to have time to prepare to go to the concert, and some people want to sit down together and just chat informally. We also discussed this in advance because Kaie said to me, I know some things about festivals, but I'm not sure they want to be mentioned. And of course, sometimes you don't want to tell the world what are your private challenges, so maybe you just want to tell your neighbor, but not everybody out there. Yes, Ramona?
Now there's one question in the chat. Thank you for the insightful discussions. The biggest obstacle seems to be finances so far. Are there any novel strategies, ideas on that in the agendas of the ECA or of the IFCM?
Yeah, so that's something we will have to work on, new financial strategies. I must say that as a Secretary General of the European Choral Association, I do get quite a lot of emails from sometimes individual people, sometimes choirs who say, we want to travel, we need financial support. And it's very difficult to do that. And the answers cannot be given for the whole world because it's different. You heard Jeffrey say, well, we have mostly private funding. It's a habit in the United States because the government has not given a lot of funding. On the other hand, in Germany, it's quite difficult to get private funding because people are still in the thinking, well, the government is there to, it's supposed to fund culture, so why should we do that as private persons? The Estonian government supports conductors to go and travel abroad and learn at events, which is a fantastic thing, but not every choir does it. ACDA has a program where they do bilateral exchange, which is also a solution to at least exchange the conductors. And I can say that maybe one thing that we as European Choral Association started to offer is it's very expensive to move a whole choir. So sometimes compromise in still having an experience with a foreign conductor and some intercultural exchange is actually to invite a conductor and come and work with your choir at home. And we do offer a small financial support to what we call peer-to-peer training, so that a choir can get some funding to invite a conductor from abroad. And that's especially important for the choirs from the regions where everybody has problems. In our countries, there are people who can afford it and people who cannot afford it. But we have some countries in the world where the majority of the people cannot afford to travel across the world. Also seeing that flight prices, travel prices have increased enormously. But I think funding will be a topic that will remain for us. Also, as we said, the cultural funding at local level. If we cannot find a host town to host a festival for 3,000 people anymore, we have to look for new solutions. And on the other hand, we say we cannot ask people to pay 1,500 euros per person participation fee, because then nobody will come. So we also have to find a balance in there. And sometimes it may be we have to shorten events, we have to make them smaller, more regional. These are things that we are discussing as possible options to make it easier in future. Yes, can you come to the microphone, please?
I'm a singer with several choirs. I also conduct choirs. And during the pandemic, I've seen that the technical solutions really sprung up and advanced forward. And now with the face-to-face singing once again possible, these solutions have been not fully abandoned, but really scaled back a lot. And very little of the advantages is being used, obviously for good reasons. You like to rub shoulders, you like to listen to your breathing neighbor. But I just wonder, is there any push forward from the organizations or from other choirs to kind of still further develop these benefits one has seen when being really pushed, we're advancing quite fast?
I can maybe say that as European Choral Association, we have been supporting a project that unfortunately took longer to develop. It's called Digital Stage, and it's allowing low latency common music making if you live in a country that has good internet connections, which in Germany is sometimes a challenge. But if you go to Albania, you have wonderful internet connections, or to Estonia. So yes, and we have not given up on these projects, because we believe that there are situations where they are still useful. And I will say a few things. For example, my conductor now, when she knows that some singers are sick and at home, she offers a Zoom rehearsal for the singers to follow the rehearsal and not lose the rehearsal completely. And we always have singers who ask for this. So this is something that was left. It's not the same as being in the rehearsal room, but it's better than missing the rehearsal altogether. So it's a compromise. Also sometimes to offer additional rehearsals, or for example, train the text of a song or do things like that. The online tools can be very useful. It can also help reduce travels and reduce the number of rehearsals you need when you are working over regionally, for example. So you have a choir that has to travel from different parts. Maybe you will do the first rehearsals online and then you will meet for the last rehearsal. So I think, yes, our organizations are looking into this, trying to see what can be the use of that in future. And as I said, trying to see which formats are good for online participation and which formats are maybe less good. And I think the last thing I would like to say is what I see as a certain danger or challenge, and that's why some conferences and some festivals have decided not to stream everything, is for people to have the expectancy that everything should be offered for free online. And there we have to make a shift, a mental shift, and also say there is such a thing as fair remuneration, and we should not expect people to offer everything for free online in addition to what they do anyway. And that we may have to find ways of charging online participation. And for example, what we did at Leading Voices, that the European Choral Association, with the support of IFCM, did last year in the Netherlands, is we said we opened certain offers for online participation against a fee. We show a few things on social media for everybody, but there are things that are only for the people who are there, because we want to encourage people to also come. So this is the balance we are trying to make, but we're trying not to lose it completely. Well, thank you very much to everybody here in the hall. Thank you very much to Ramona for preparing the survey and presenting the first results. And thank you very much to the audience at home for following us. I wish you a wonderful continuation of this competition and some great concerts tonight. Bye.